Whether you're beginning or moderate or advanced level, I want to be able to help as much as I can to sort of escalate your level of transacting, because over the long term, we're going to do more deals together. If I can up the game of every buyer and how they present and the terms they bring and all that stuff, it just makes me look better to my seller as well.
The Apartment Gurus podcast is brought to you by Greenlight Equity Group, an apartment acquisitions and holdings firm co-founded by Carl York and Tate Siemer, host of this show. We offer you the opportunity to be an owner of cash-flowing, wealth-growing apartments without the headaches of being a landlord. These assets are recession-resistant, risk-mitigated, offer significant tax advantages, and are a great alternative to the stock market. Ready to check it out? Go to www.investwithgreenlight.com today to book a personal consultation with Carl or Tate. Again, that's investwithgreenlight.com. We look forward to meeting you. Welcome to The Apartment Gurus, where twice a week, host Tate Siemer brings you deep dive interviews with the wisest gurus in the apartment investing industry. These experts are sure to create game-changing value and inspiration designed to catapult your business to the next level. Be sure to reach out to Tate at www.investwithgreenlight.com for access to his investor portal and Calendly link. And now, here is Tate Siemer and the Apartment Gurus.
Welcome, everybody, back to the Apartment Gurus podcast. Super excited today. We've got a repeat offender on the show. Mr.
like that.
Beau Beery.
What's up?
Beau Beery, guys. Beery. Go Google him right now and check out everything that he has in the way of social media content. I'll just right off the bat mention his book, which has been a tremendous asset for us at Greenlight, and then has become required reading in my mastermind. In multifamily investors who dominate is. Am I getting the title? I don't have it right in front of me.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah, and it is a banger, guys. If you are in acquisitions and specifically in broker relations, and by the way, I'll just do this little thing on broker relations versus direct to seller. If, in my opinion, and I get there's a lot of ways to skin the cat in real estate, but if you're serious about getting into institutional level commercial real estate assets in multifamily specifically, my advice is to put all of your sourcing eggs into the broker relations basket, if that makes sense. And the reason and I'll just break that down real quick. Any savvy owner of a property, which if you have 80, 100 plus units, 150 plus units, or and sometimes 30, 20, 40 plus units, you've got a pretty savvy owner that understands the market somewhat, understands what they own, and probably pretty well, and may have an inflated idea of what it's worth, but at the very least, that they're not gonna pick up the phone or they're not going to answer the phone from a cold caller that wants to buy their place and could deal with them. They're going to talk to the biggest, baddest broker that they know and have access to about getting the very most they can for their property. That's number one. Number two is if you go into a market that you want to be in and start sourcing direct to seller, phone calls, postcards, et cetera, you are directly competing with brokers for those listings. Straight up, right? And so you're actually creating a lack of alliance, if you will, with the most powerful people in the market. And when I say powerful people, what I mean by that is, it's kind of like the 80-20 rule, where 20% of the people are producing 80% of the results. I think it's probably more like 95, 5 or 90-10, right, where 5 to 10% of brokers are producing 90% of the results. Those brokers, guys, you want in your corner. You want to know who they are. You want to know everything that you can about them. And you want to be building, nurturing relationships with them for lots of reasons that probably are pretty evident, right? But when you're looking specifically at getting good deals, here's the reality. We're in a tough market. And we're in a market where seller expectations don't match values in a lot of different parts of the country. And good brokers are the ones that go to bat for you to get a seller to bring a property to market at a price and everything else, but especially price and terms that will sell. And because a good broker is not going to waste their time on bringing an overpriced property to market.
Nope.
So they do the work, guys. They go to the owner, like, this is what you can get, and this is why. And they do that heavy lifting, and they bring great deals to market. And quite frankly, it's really the most reliable, constant source of well underwritten, well priced assets in the market. And you can do the direct to seller thing. And we tried for a year with an employee that was just doing direct to seller. This was 3 years ago plus, I think, before Beau and I connected, and before I kind of got my head around this. But I can tell you that our broker alliances, specifically in Columbus, Ohio, shout out to George Scaff, Carter Stevens with Newmark, and Alex Marsh, and mentioned those guys specifically. Alex with his firm. Slipping my mind. Skip Weiler, the Robert Weiler Group.
Yep.
Wow. So anyway, like those guys are like huge parts of our team at this point. We have 3 years track record. We've done 4 deals with George's team, who has 86% market share in the Columbus multifamily market.
That's
so
good.
Anyway, Beau, dude, thank you so much. I know I just did a little ramble there, but I think it's an important context.
It was necessary. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's awesome to have you back. I feel like I spend a lot of time with you that you don't know about, like, in terms of like reading and integrating and implementing the book ourselves, but coaching it inside with my one-on-one clients and inside of my mastermind. So welcome, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. It's always good to be here. We had a good time last time we did this, had some good viewership, put out some good content. So I'm looking forward to it.
That was 150 episodes ago. I was just looking.
Wow. For real. Holy crap.
Summer of 22. So 125 episodes, because it was like right at the halfway point. We're at 250 now, roughly. And I think you were episode 122 or 125-ish, if I'm not 112, actually. Episode 112 of the Apartment Gurus. So
anybody need our views yet?
I don't have that in front of me, man. I don't know.
That's all right.
If they did, it was probably Neil Bawa or one of those cats. Right. I mean, guys, Beau, and I'll let you pick it up from here. Like the book that Beau wrote for us specifically as acquisitions specialists, managers, acquisition firms, whatever you want to call that role that your company plays. And of course, there's other roles that you probably play in the way of holdings and asset management and investor relations. But in terms of broker relations, guys, this book is one of a kind. And it's written from the perspective of a top producing broker in Northern Florida, which everybody knows is not a sleepy market or a sleepy place at all. There's tons of growth and just a lot going on there. A lot of heavy demand on the housing, and people love Florida, and the trend goes there. But so Beau gave us a gift in terms of like, from the broker's perspective, and you got to think about it this way: they're the darling, right? The broker is the hot woman in the red dress that walks into the party that everybody looks at and should be looking at. And I'm not suggesting that you are over the top in terms of like schmoozing and in that way. If anything, I think it's the opposite. But I mean, these are just important people, and so to have a guidebook that, from that perspective, that trains us how to best build those relationships systematically, what SOPs to have in place, how to work through your broker CRM, how to build those relationships, what's important to a broker, right? Like from Beau's perspective, or something like a George Scaff in Columbus that is listing 86% of the multifamily properties in Columbus at great pricing and moving them. Like, what's important to George in terms of the people that he works with? What's important to Beau in terms of the people that get awarded his listings, his deals? So I just can't say enough good things about this book. I was telling Beau before we started recording here that I think I have 10 to 15 copies of the book, hardcover, on my shelf at home. I give one to everybody that joins the mastermind when they join. And like I said, it's required reading. So I buy it for them and ship it to them. So, well, I mean, Beau, how old's the book now? A couple of years, 3 years?
3 years now. Yeah. Just turned 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's it done for you to be? I mean, just
it's been really amazing.
An author. Yeah.
It's been awesome. I mean, I would say it's been the best business card ever, right? I mean, to be able to hand that to someone. For me, it was kind of a mind dump of just, I've been watching for 25 years some of the best investors in the world do things right. And then I watched massive times more number of investors who do things wrong. And it was very frustrating for me. And I could only help so much on the phone on, helping someone with what they did right or wrong on an investment and why they didn't win it. And so I just decided, I need to write this. And my coach was, really pushing me to write it. And so I wrote it. And so it's been awesome because it really has helped in deal making. I can tell when I'm working a deal with someone, whether or not they've read my book. Oftentimes they'll tell me, but even if they don't tell me, just kind of some of the decisions they made, I can tell that they read the book and some of the concepts I had in there on how to win the deals and what to do and not to do during a transaction, what to do after a transaction. And so that was the whole point of it. It was my Jerry Maguire script, right? Like, kind of, this is the way business should be done. This is how because a broker, like you were mentioning earlier, what's unique about this industry, this position, is that we get to see the inside look. We get to see the inside look of how the owners of these assets make decisions on who they choose, for the buyer and what they're thinking and how they work with the brokers, the conversations that are happening, between broker and seller on how we're going to choose that person. There's just all kinds of psychology involved in this. A lot of it's common sense, but it gets lost, right? And ego comes to play. And so the book really kind of, sort of reopens the mind on like, oh yeah, like that makes sense. I need to change the way I'm doing that. So it's been awesome. And go ahead.
No, I was going to say I think what the book did for me was that it took me out of my perspective in my position in the industry and in the transaction and in the LOI process and the whatever the competitives and allowed me to see big picture. Like, what does the seller need here? What does the broker need here? What do we need to do and not do to win the deal and become the buyer? And that's an important subtext to kind of the framing at the beginning of the show is when you do put all your eggs in the broker relations basket, which again is what I coach, right? And it's the only way I coach. I don't coach anything else other than what we do. But when you do that, you're going to end up in competitive situations, right? You're going to have an asset that you love, and hopefully you don't love it emotionally, but as far as the underwriting and the metrics and your buy box, right? It checks all the boxes in your buy box. As far as vintage and unit count and submarket and et cetera, business plan. And then you've got 2, 3, 4, 7 other parties at the table, right? So how do you stand out, right? How do you win that deal? Well, I mean, if you want a competitive edge, order Beau's book. Like that straight up, it's the best answer I have on this. And there's nothing else out there like it that I know of at all. It's an incredibly unique look. So yeah, keep going.
Well, I think the biggest part of the book is obviously one component is once you're in a contract or once you're competing for a deal, here's how you win it. But before that, which was what you had mentioned in the beginning, is just what it's done for you, Tate, and it's done for others is stop trying to call the seller directly. And this was never an attempt. This book was never an attempt to bring more business to myself by eliminating buyer to seller transactions. I knew they weren't happening anyway, right? I literally did a 5-year
and
study.
that's such a great point that it's almost a little bit of a myth that
It is a myth.
I mean, obviously it does happen, but yeah.
It only, listen,
do you know what the percentage of transactions overall transaction go broker?
Yeah, I did in the book, I actually did a study. I did a 5-year study in the time leading up to the book. And what I mean by that is I didn't do a study 4 or 5 years. I studied 5 years of transactions, which represented something like 35 or 40% of all transactions. And I literally called every seller and or buyer that I needed to, or the broker, to determine whether or not that transaction was done or procured by a broker. 93% of every transaction over 10 units was done by a broker. Could have been off market, could have been on market, whatever the case may be, but it was done by a broker. And it's, listen, if you trade houses, duplexes, quadruplexes, much higher probability as a buyer to be able to call that person and do a deal with them directly, the seller. Sure. I still think the broker relationships are more important under 10 units, but once you start getting 20, 30 units and above, like you said, these are people who, even if they own another business and are full-time in some other business, they ain't stupid. They know, because they're getting tons and tons of calls every week from buyers and brokers. They know their shit is very, very sought after, right? Why in the hell would any human being rightfully entertain a phone call from someone they don't know? And on the phone call is like, yeah, you know what? You're saying all the right things, Tate. I don't know who you are, but man, you got great. Let me sell this to you for 90 cents on the dollar. Right.
I'm sending the rent roll on T12 right over to you.
Yeah, let me send it over to you. I don't need a CA. I don't need to know your bank accounts and what you own and all your qualifications. Doesn't happen.
Right. Yeah. And then so there you go. 93% go through of multifamily transactions go through brokers.
The point, Tate, though, is that you could, if you wanted to be that person who wanted to go direct to seller because you believe there's a bigger profit potential. Let's say that's correct. Okay. That person could spend a year, 2, 3 years to find that home run deal that they bought for 80 or 90 cents on the dollar. Okay. In that 2-3 year period, okay, Tate, who is working with 8 or 9 different brokers that cover a region and is constantly in contact with them and building that relationship, we're sending you dozens of deals a year, and you're probably doing 4 or 5 deals a year every year that are base hits. Yes, there may not all be home runs, but they're good base hits. Your net worth will be significantly more times in 10 years than the guy who's trying to. And so that's the whole point, is you just see a way bigger volume of transactions by, sort of schmoozing or networking or whatever you want to call it with as many brokers as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the distinctions that I remember when we made this the transition from the single family model, flipping essentially and buy and hold, to multifamily is that space is very transactional, right? And if you think about the direct to seller model, whether it's all some sort of marketing, whether you're cold calling, you got VAs cold calling, you're tomahawking 10,000 whatever DMs, like whatever that look. I mean, and as an owner of 9 assets right now, I got a text message earlier today, from some number. I have no idea who it is. When you want to sell, or if you want to sell, blah, 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 in Oklahoma City, let us know, or would you consider, et cetera, et cetera. We get it all the time. And so that's another excellent point. Like, take the 7% of transactions that are going direct to seller. There are that seller hears from somebody probably every day or a few people a week, just like you. How are you going to stand out? How are you going to differentiate yourself? And so that whole transactional business model versus relationship or relational business model, to me, is essential. Like, and like, there's no right or wrong here, but I would say, at least for me and my personality and, one of my superpowers, there's a few things I'm good at here, Beau, I think, and so, a number of things I'm not, but I think one of the things I'm halfway decent at is building these relationships and in ways that are authentic and lasting and that build trust, and like, us being in Columbus, and I'll just mention the Newmark team again. We had a very large deal in 2022 with Newmark under contract for, like, it ended up being about 4 months during the interest rate crisis that year, where interest rates, we put it under contract in the spring. 2 weeks later, the interest rate market, or the debt market, went haywire, which sent the institutional equity market haywire. And this was a $27 million acquisition. And we didn't get that deal done at the end of the day. Right. And like, that's not a good thing, like, for anybody in anybody's realm, or from anybody's point of view. That's not a good thing. Right. And that would, in a lot of cases, not necessarily ruin, like, in a horrible way, that relationship with the broker, but it could definitely bring things kind of to a halt. And you would likely, in a lot of cases, not be able to get that deal done again. I worked my butt off to just, number one, through that transaction and through the kind of disintegration of it at the end of the day, which had to do with equity, some institutional equity sources jumping off the boat at the last minute.
Yeah.
I took 100% responsibility. Number one, I didn't make anybody else wrong or make any excuses, and just owned it. Right. And and said, look, this is awful. It's awful for us, number one, but I get that it's really awful for you, and it's awful for your seller. And, these are pros. Like, these are guys that move a lot of real estate, a lot of big numbers, and it is like, kind of like direct, and let's say, is as strong of an advocate as George can be for his sellers. He understood, he got it. And he's like, this isn't he was actually quite kind to me in that conversation, and said, you're not the only one in this situation, which was the reality of the kind of that second half of 22. So, and then we just went back to bat on new offerings that they brought out, and did the very best we could. And we closed we've closed 2 more deals since then, and we're under contract on one right now with them. So, that's a relationship model, right? Like, that's like me working as hard as I can on the front end of that relationship, because everything else is kind of falls into place if you do it right. And like I said, Beau's kind of the thought leader in this space on how to do that. So, yeah. So Beau, I want to dive into the market, which is so unique right now. But like anything else on your brilliant book, and kind of, how you have educated and influenced us as acquisitions syndicators and acquisitions firms and entities. Like, any other kind of final thoughts on that?
I would just, I guess if someone's not a reader, so the book is in, it's in hard format, there's audio, there's Kindle, but I also have this YouTube channel where I've taught a lot of the same concepts. The Beau Knows Multifamily. So if you go on there, I have a beginners playlist, I've got advanced level playlist, and that's kind of more of a visual. So, taking a look at that, and I try to use a lot of case studies as well. So anyway,
but the Beau Knows Multifamily YouTube channel, I'll admit I don't know as well as the book. Is that content also kind of from the same perspective to the same audience, or is it more of a general? No,
okay. It's got a lot of the same concepts. I mean, I have videos on how to write a good cover letter, letter of intent, things that should be in the purchase contract, how you prepare properties for sale. What do you do when someone says this? What happens and when this situation happens in a transaction? Like, I'll use real deals and hide names and addresses and talk about situations. I mean, you name it. It's a couple decades of stuff on there.
Yeah. Yep. I'm actually I just popped over to your channel, and I just think it's awesome. I mean, I didn't have my head around how much you've done in the way of thought leadership outside of the book. And I know you're a speaker and, do that sort of thing too. But, I mean, the other thing to me, like a little higher level than kind of where we've been here, is the example that you are in the way of niche personal branding, if you will.
Yeah.
In the way that you pick this incredibly unique framing in the industry, or frame in the industry of like, I'm the broker that is committed to making the buyers here better at what they do, and making the good buyers better at what they do, right? The ones that care enough to pick up a book and read, or call me,
Yeah.
or engage somehow, watch the channel. Like that's really in this economy where it's all about influence and value add. For you listeners, like, check this out. Like, check out Bono's multifamily YouTube channel. Check out the book. Check out Beau on social media. You'll learn. You'll have some fun posts about vintage car shows and whatnot. But and by the way, I actually used you, Beau, in a mastermind meeting the other day about like how that's part of your personal brand too, and how that's perfectly great. In other words, there's no formula, in my opinion, for personal branding. As long, there's some general guidelines, in my opinion, especially depending on what your goals are. But
sure.
But inside of the industry, you've picked a very, very unique messaging set, if you will, and just kind of overall like communication channel. Like, I'm a broker. I do 12, 15 big transactions a year, essentially one a month, and in a very vibrant market. And I'm going to add value here to the industry by educating somebody that needs me, that, in ways they probably have no idea.
Yeah.
Right. Like, they need to hear, like, we as buyers, we need this, right? Because guess what? If you don't have it and you haven't learned it and you're not implementing it, somebody else is, and you're at a competitive disadvantage.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm 48 years old. I'll be done. I'm not going to retire. I enjoy doing this. I'll be doing this for at least 20 years. And so, whether you're beginning or moderate or advanced level, I want to be able to, help as much as I can to sort of escalate your level of transacting, because over the long term, we're going to do more deals together. And since I'm a listing agent, if I can up the game of every buyer and how they present and the terms they bring and all that stuff, it just makes me look better to my seller as well. So it's kind of a full circle win-win for everybody.
And who's that buyer going to use in 5 years, when they, re-up and recapitalize and whatnot? Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah. So we won't spend any more time on the personal branding thing, but I think there's some pretty cool takeaways, I think, here for listeners, especially if you follow up and check out how Beau's done it. Social media, Beau, where's your focus there? What is there a particular platform you're big on?
LinkedIn is kind of my only. I've tried out all the platform. To me, LinkedIn is the best serve for our industry, and of course, YouTube would be number 2 for me. But that's more of my teaching part of it. But LinkedIn, I'm pretty active on there several times a week.
Over 1 billion users on LinkedIn now.
It's amazing.
58 million companies. Yeah. I mean, and it's not even social media. My opinion, it's a platform. It's a business platform these days anymore. It's a $1 billion networking platform, or billion person networking platform, if you will. Could be easily $1 billion if you do it right.
To me, the most valuable part of LinkedIn is the polling. I mean, once you've created enough of a following, I'm at 18 or 20,000 followers now. That allows you to have some very fruitful polling. And when you use the polling part of LinkedIn, usually I can get anywhere from a minimum of 150 responses, oftentimes to 500-600 responses. And that's enough data points to really drive home what's happening in the market. So I can ask various questions about multifamily or transactional, or what would you do? And this is what happens. And, so I have the results for years of polls that I've done on my website. Like, if you go to beaubeery.com and you go to the resources section, you'll see polling, and you can see just dozens and dozens of polls that I've run in the past on situational stuff. That's very, very cool. And so I really love that part of the website.
We could almost do a whole episode on LinkedIn. We just did inside our mastermind. We just did a two-part workshop over the course of, they were 2 hours each, right? And on LinkedIn strategy and profile optimization, and particularly like interaction, like how to really grow your presence and your following. It's posting is important because it's your message. It's what, it's what people see as part of what they see when, and your profile is a huge part of what they see.
Yep.
But man, that the commenting on, on Gary Vaynerchuk's post and getting in front of his 50,000 followers or whatever it is, or inside of our industry, Beau, I mean, did you say how many followers did you say you had?
It's 18 and something and change right now. I think I just looked it up.
That's, I mean, again, like Beau posts, yeah, and I bit the hook on your polls many times, and then waiting on, and it's cool because the way the polls are set up is you don't see the results until you chime in on your opinion on the poll. And then it's a lot of times it's kind of controversial, right? Yeah. So you've got people coming in like, and it encourages people to take a position, which is engaging. And then, so you got all these comments going, you got side conversations going, but like, starting with a comment on Alex Hormozzi's most recent post. And then all of a sudden you've got people from his sphere. Well, by the way, you just put yourself, I don't know how many followers he had. I don't know what his LinkedIn presence is like. His YouTube and Instagram is huge. But you put yourself in front of those type people and that scope of that range, that reach of numbers, right?
Right.
There's no other way to do that. You start from scratch on LinkedIn on your own. You're not going to get in front of anybody. So it's definitely about honing you and your profile and your message and your posting and doing a good job of that. And that's part of the niche personal branding thing we talked about. But
it's really important for the investors because the brokers are very active on LinkedIn, and we're watching stuff. We're seeing when an investor posts when they bought something. We're watching the video of them doing the due diligence walkthrough on their property on site. We're seeing the pictures of the post renovation. We're seeing the posts about when they just bought something. They were seeing the pictures of them at a closing table or a conference they're putting on. It's like, we're watching to see who the players are as well, right? Like those are all deposits you're making into the brokers' minds and other investors' minds who you may be buying from in the future.
Right. Not to mention potential passive investors or equity funds or family offices or institutional equity.
All that stuff. Yeah.
Lenders, 100%. Yeah. Dude, let's talk about the market. I'll just let you go on this. I mean, you were on the show in 22, I think early in 22. I don't have it in front of me anymore, but the shift in the market's insane since then, obviously. I mean, to rewind, what were interest rates in like summer of 20? Well, that was actually the summer that interest rates really spiked. So let's say spring of 22, we were, the basis on commercial debt was near zero, right?
Right.
And we know what's happened since then, and it's impacted everything. I mean, 500% increase on the basis on debt it's shocked the system, right? So what have you seen on your side? In the asset class that you're in the market you're in?
Yep. So I will say, the trailing 5 years is such a perfect depiction to run stats from, right? So that essentially is 2019, 20, 21, 22, 23, right? So there's 5 years. And what's amazing is, 2018 was kind of a normal year. 2019 was a little better. 2020 was the COVID, and in the back half of 2020 started spiking. 2021 was the most insane year ever in the history. Most number of transactions ever. And I always do everything on
highest volume by all metrics. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt, but number of transactions, volume of transactions, et cetera, et cetera.
I track number of the most because, you could have 5 apartment complexes sell for $100 million, and that can really sway things a lot. So number of transactions is the most important thing in our business, right? And then then you got 2022, right, where maybe the first quarter was kind of at the height, and then boom, it started to go bad, and then 2023 was the worst year. I believe, and 73% of people disagree with me on my polling, but I believe we've already hit bottom, and I believe we're in a flat period about to start a very slow, I guess, going back up, right?
Ascent, yeah.
Ascent, right. So in a normal year, I do 12 to 15 deals per year, okay? Of that, about 45% of those are over 100 units, and the balance are under 100 units, right? I do everything over 10 units. I have a junior that does everything under 10 units. And so in 2023, okay, I did only 10 deals. The biggest difference was all 10 were under 50. Right? It just never happened. And by the way, in 2023, there were only, oh gosh, let me see here. Let me pull this up. This is a shocking stat. So let me just give me the second to pull this up on my Excel spreadsheet, because I track every closing. And as you know, I cover the entire northern half of Florida. In 2023, there were only 21 conventional closings over 100 units for the entire year for the entire northern half of Florida. 21. Wow. That's like 1.4 deals a month over 100 units in Tallahassee, Jacksonville, St. Augustine, Daytona, New Smyrna, Ormond, Lake City, Gainesville, Ocala, Lakeland, Winter Haven, DeLand, Deltona, all those markets, right? 21 deals, right?
Yeah, I would have guessed Jacksonville alone would have done that.
Well, in a normal year they would have, right? And so actually in Jacksonville in 2023, and most of those 21 were in Jacksonville. In fact, 11 of the 21 were in Jacksonville. Half of them were in Jacksonville, right?
Yeah, it's a smoking market.
So if you didn't transact in Jacksonville for whatever reason, you literally only had access to 10 deals for the balance of the northern half of Florida, right? Now, in 2024, we've only done only 4 deals so far through April that were conventional over 100 units, but we've done 3 times the number of deals under 100 units through April compared to through April of 2023. So the under 100 unit market has really shot up. This year, and keep in mind, about 45% of my deals are over 100 units. This year, only 4 deals have been done over 100 units, right? I didn't get any of those yet, right? Which, whatever, there's 59 other brokers that track the northern half of Florida, right? 80% of the volume is done by 20 of us. So really 10, 12 brokers is who I compete against on a regular basis. This year, however, though, I've already done 14 deals through May. I have 3 more in the hopper closing June 28th. So I'm already going to have a record year in the number of closings. Every one of them has been under 100 units. Okay. And most of those have been under 50. I'm happy to death, though, to have them, right? To be able to own my own brokerage and pivot. I keep everything. I don't have any partners. I don't pay anything to the house. I am the house. And so I get to keep 100% of what I get. So doing smaller deals, I'm just glad I'm able to do that and pivot and do those. And I'm still, and the BOVs, okay, the broker opinion of values for 100 plus units has also shot up, right? Still number of transactions, number of sales is down, but the number of BOVs I've done already this year is way up over 2023. And of those, most of them are the price just isn't there yet, right? Where it makes sense to sell yet, which tells me there's, in my opinion, this is just in my head from everything I'm seeing and reading the conversations I have, I believe late 2024 to first quarter 2025 is when we're going to see the next mood change in the market, right? Whether it's going to be a 0.5 point reduction in interest rates, it's going to be a presidency change, maybe insurance stays stable enough in Florida, which is already has. That's why transacting has picked up at least under 100 units. Is even though interest rates and insurance sucks, it's been stable. But whatever the impetus is, I believe it's about to happen, okay, in the next 6 to 8 months. And all you're looking for is a mood change, right? So when I'm doing BOVs and I sit down with a seller and we talk about, why it's not time yet to sell because the price point just isn't there yet, I tell them it's not because your property has a problem or because you aren't willing to come down to where the market is. What we want to be in, if you're a seller and you have the time to wait, not everybody does, but if you're a seller that has the time to wait and you can time the market, in a perfect world scenario as a listing broker, I want to take your property to market where buyers are beating down my door to win the deal. Beau, what do I have to do to shorten my do I have to shorten my due diligence period? What if I shorten the closing period? What if I increase my deposits, Beau? Where does my price has to be? That's the market you want to be in. And that kind of market mood shift can happen like that. I mean, it already happened that quickly when it was a 60, 90-day period where the world changed. That's how fast it can happen when it goes back up. In my opinion, if you haven't already bought in the last 12 to 16 months or haven't and don't buy something in the next few months, you've already lost the window of any remote chance of good deals.
So you think the window could close still easily this year? But certainly
I really do. I am aware of how much is coming due in 2025 on debt. I'm aware of it. Okay. I'm telling you, in only 3 transactions I've tracked, okay, since January of 2023. I know a little bit of hell happened in 2022, but since January 2023, tell me 3 transactions that have occurred that sold for less than what they were purchased for. All 3 of those were purchased within the last few years. Okay. Now, are there lots of people that I've done BOVs for who can't sell because the price was just too low? They wish they could. They're in pain, but none of them are in enough pain where they're coming to market and slashing the prices and doing cut rate deals. It's just not happening. And I don't believe it's going to happen for several reasons. Number one, they're finding equity from investors to influx back into the deal to keep it alive. Or number 2, they're working with their lender. Their lender's giving them some help. Or number 3, there's a whole sideline business. There's still just tons of equity that can help those who aren't going to have any kind of, bunches of deals, impetus, that mood change that spikes things.
To me, right at the beginning of what you were describing, when you're talking about how the volume last year, all of your volume was under 100 units, to kind of tells a story, right, of what was going on, which is the big boys that know what they're doing, have good fixed rate debt that they can hold on to. Chances are that the asset's probably not performing as well as they'd like, but it's probably just fine for them. And why would they sell, right? So that's a kind of a no-brainer. And then you look at the 10 to 100 unit owners. Those are, we haven't used the term mom and pop in the show yet, but that's your mom and pop owner in a lot of cases. And
mom and
they don't
pop
necessarily
up to
have
small and medium sized syndications.
Right. And then in a lot of cases, those syndicators were bringing on adjustable rate debt or short-term debt or bridge debt. We did that on heavy lift value add Class C stuff. And we kind of, I will say, I think we've been kind of lucky in some cases. We've had the debt that we needed, we've had, and our properties are doing okay. And, we're not facing any capital calls right now or anything like that. So, but it's interesting.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I was going to say, what's interesting to me is on this is the conversation about the window closing. First of all, I think your overall sentiment about this being a bend window is and being kind of at the bottom is I'm very much in alignment with. And a lot of the experts and people hear me and talk about Neil Bawa a lot, and he's been on the show I think 4 times and just a data driven guy. He says we're at a 25% discount market wide right now. And this is the next thing I want to talk to you about is the level of distress that you see in some of these sales. But, because of distressed or perceived distress or whatever, there's the properties that are selling are in his eyes have that a significant discount. So it's all about getting the right loan, the right debt piece. If you have that, with a 25% discount, you're going to do fine. So, but I think there's also a lot of people that are looking at it like the window's about to open, right? Like we're going to get a flood of distressed properties at a huge discount here. And I don't hear you saying that at all.
I mean, I don't cover the rest of the world, right? I mean, but I'm telling you, in Florida, it ain't happening, and I'm willing to eat my shoes if it does happen. And if it does happen in Florida, it won't be a result of Florida. It would be a result of maybe the rest of the world collapsed so bad and so significantly that it infiltrated into Florida. But that shit ain't happening in Florida. I don't know if the recording picked up this part of it, but I told you I track every single sale over 10 units. And when I did a study a couple months ago, I went back to January 2023. I looked at every single sale. Only 3 sales occurred that had sold for less than what they were purchased for recently. Everything else was sold at a profit, right? Yeah. Now some of those may not have sold for the IRR they wanted or the cash on cash is what they wanted, but they made a profit and they lived to fight another day, right? The values in my part of the northern half of Florida fell between 15 and 20%. Okay. They could have been 25% overall across the US, but in the northern half of Florida, it ranged from 15 to 20%. And the reason the smaller properties are trading a lot more, just to hit on that notion, is listen, the value adjustment as a result of insurance and interest rates in Florida, it affects all properties proportionally. The reason the bigger properties aren't selling is because if you had a $20 million property, right? I mean, that's a $3-4 million dip in value, right? If you don't have to sell, you're going to wait another year. You're going to wait till 2025, right? Or 2026, depending on what you think, to sell because you can. But the guy who owns a 20 unit, $2.4 million deal, typically those properties have been held longer. Their basis is lower. There's a lot more profit when they sell. They're not going to not sell over $200,000-$300,000, right? They're going to take their chips off the table. They've had it for a longer time. They're maybe a little bit nervous of what's going to happen in the future. And, they don't want to have to chase the price down if shit goes down. Right. So they've sold and they've done well. And some people have done very, very well. So I just.
Well, and Florida is one of those hot markets, right? It's part of the Sun Belt. Kind of, you can throw Georgia, Carolinas, those super popular states. Florida is kind of its own animal, its own beast. And so there's going to be variation there, but there's a lot of hot markets in this country, Phoenix, Dallas, San Antonio, Austin, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Beau, just shifting gears here, talk a little bit about going back to kind of you as a leader in this space, talk about your coaching program for brokers specifically. This is once again something you're doing that I have never heard anybody else doing. So talk about that.
Yeah, no problem. So, the last, decade or so, I have regularly gotten calls from multifamily brokers. Some of them are friends. Some of them are people I've never met. And they would call me up and say, "Hey, Beau, how do you do this in your CRM? And how do you, where do you get your stats from? And when you make a phone call, what do you say? How do you introduce yourself? And, how do you do the deals? And how do you do this? So, just various stuff in brokerage, right? Like we're always kind of helping each other out, but I would get a lot of these calls every week and it's happened for years and years. And it's always been frustrating because I know that I can help them for 10, 15 minutes on the phone and give them a quick Band-Aid for whatever they called about. But I also knew in the back of my mind, there's 37 steps beyond what I just told them at 30,000 feet that you actually have to do to make it perform. Right. And it was just frustrating, but I don't have the time. I'm still an active broker and will be until I'm dead. I can't just do one-on-one coaching, right? You couldn't pay me enough to do that. It just didn't work. So my coach, Blaine Strickland, who I've been with for over a decade, who also has his own coaching platform where he coaches all different kinds of asset class brokers. We saw a niche. And so we started, calling up a bunch of brokers and polling them and saying, hey, listen, like if we were able to put together a format where it was affordable, would you have an interest in doing some group coaching with Beau? And so I used Blaine's platform called onemoredeal.net. And we put together a program where I coach anywhere from 10 to 20 agents per month in one Zoom call. And it's a once a month call, and it's a 12-month program. And they pay a monthly fee. They can quit anytime. There's no there's no 1-year contract or whatever. They can quit anytime. And so each month I teach a concept, right? We define a territory. We do CRMs. We do social media, what you say on the phone, what you do after a transaction, during a transaction, how you market listings, all this stuff, how you find listings, how you find these deals. So there's a whole curriculum that we go through over a 1-year period. The first 3 quarters of every call, I'm teaching a concept. The last quarter is kind of a Q&A. We have an accountability session. So the next time they come on there, we go through the accountability. But it's been very rewarding to me because I get to learn a lot of stuff too, what other brokers doing in other markets, but also because, I get to actually give the 37 steps beyond just the little Band-Aid to do that. And then we also, at the end of every year, we have a multifamily summit. We just had our first one last year where we have, again, just 15, 20 brokers who we get together usually in Orlando, and we'll have a 1 or 2 day session. We'll actually tour some properties. I'll, show them what I look for. We have the actual owner of the properties that come along. And then of course, during the day, we have a couple speakers come through. So it's been awesome. Yeah, it's been great. But the biggest challenge I'm seeing that brokers are having is, number one, obviously finding listings is always the challenge. Underwriting them and getting the sellers to a correct sale price, right? And I have ways that I do that. That's been very effective.
Hugely important. Huge.
Yeah. And then also, finding the right buyers and knowing how to qualify the buyers. Those are a lot of what we go through. And we do a lot of, role playing. Hey, Beau, this guy said this, what would you have done? And I had this objection, and what do you do? So, yeah.
Dude, I hear your voice and as you're talking about it, and like one concept you're speaking to is like kind of a holistic approach to this, if you will. And you went through a long list there a couple minutes ago of like all the things, right? Like you got to be good at all these different things, social media, conversations with buyers, sellers, good underwriting, like et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's competitive. And if you're going to be successful, you got to be a baller, man. And you got to be good across the board at all of it. And to me, it's the same when I, coaching my guys, I really arrived at that realization pretty early. Like, and I'm sure you can relate a little bit. You have a little bit more of a group model than I do. I have a smaller group, but I mean, eventually, as a coach, you're coaching the whole human being, because, and I'm sure you get into the mindset stuff too, right? Like, because it's a big part of it. That's always there. It's a huge part of it, and but the meaning, speaking for myself, and I hear it in your voice too, like the level of meaning that it provides me personally, and I can hear it in your voice too, as far as like just being able to like have the success that you've had benefit other people in really impactful, meaningful ways, and just like helping people live their next best life, right? Yeah. And get into the next step and get them closer to who they want to be. It is such an honor and rewarding process for me, and kind of like almost the honor of a lifetime, really, for me, and kind of brings my psych major to get into stuff and my other experience in business. So and well,
there's just not the training out there. I mean, especially for brokers, like the brokerage model just is so flawed. It doesn't work. Right. I mean, when a young kid, 20, 30 years old goes into the business, or maybe who's in a different industry and now he's wanting to get into brokerage, you come in there, brokerages just can't provide this kind of coaching one-on-one, right? I mean, it's usually just, especially at a lot of the nationals, you're just thrown to the wolves, or you're put on a successful broker's team and you learn by watching, but that broker still can't, that successful agent still can't like train you one-on-one on exactly what to say and how to market and do all these different components, right? It's the same thing on the investor side. Yes, there's lots of group training and materials and tools and conventions you can go to, but providing actual like phone call or Zoom call representation one-on-one and answering questions like that, it's not a whole lot of stuff out there, and it sucks. So it's a big need. It really is.
Yeah. Dude, you're an amazing leader, and you're just an easy guy to hang out with and jam with, and appreciate the contribution you've been for numerous years now, to specifically to me and my partners and what we've been able to do. And I actually think that you've been like that kind of that thing I went through at the top of the episode about the importance of being a broker relations model. I actually, looking back, I think you kind of solidified that for me. I was kind of already in that space because I wasn't loving the direct to seller game. We just weren't getting anything out of it, quite frankly. And because the 7% of those deals were going to other people, right? Reading your book and then having you on the show and then spreading your message to my guys, and the influence that I have in my coaching space has been super important, man. So thank you. And can't wait to see what you do next, man. Like, you know, and do you have any idea what that looks like? You just kind of doing your thing right now, and you're in a groove, right?
Yeah, I'm loving it, man. I had a Coldwell Banker Commercial and a Coldwell Banker franchise for 10 years. And I sold that back to my partners in 2020 so that I can just, instead of having 100 agents, right, just focus on continuing my multifamily brokerage program. And I started that in 2021. And so it's just me. I have an assistant, I have a junior, and then I farm out everything else, right? Various different components, and just kind of continuing to really deliver, just very, very high customer service, really good data, and do it the way I want to do it. And no, I'll never be able to sell my brokerage for $100 million like Bob Knackel, right? I mean, that guy's a killer. He has a great model. I'll never, because it's just me, right? But I buy real estate. That's going to be my retirement. I want to just continue to do what I'm doing deals with the people I want to do deals with in the way I want to do it, and just provide really, really high customer service and help as many people as I can get rich as F.
Yeah, I love it. Rich AF. Yeah, I love that. Dude, one quick note, like listeners, when you hear Beau says it's just him and his junior and his assistant, don't let him fool you on this, because it's seductive to think that may be doable for you, I think, as an entrepreneur and as a model. The reason Beau can do that is because he's systematized and automated AF, right? You agree with that, Beau? I mean, you got to be dialed, man, especially on the broker side, or on the capital raising side. You're dealing with tens of millions of dollars of people's life savings. Like, you got to do this right. And so if you're running lean in terms of HR like you are, Beau, it's because you've done a lot of other things in a really robust, systematic way. And I know that about you, so I can claim that about you. So
yeah, the people who own these assets, they want killers, right? I mean, you can't be a part-timer, you can't be a half-timer, you can't be, they have to know that you are the man, that you're following the data like the back, everything to the second of what's trading for, what buyers are thinking. And so you just got to operate on a whole different level. You have to understand the good brokers that are in this business. The reason you want to build those relationships as much as possible with brokers is when we wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, every single morning, all we think about, we eat, sleep, breathe, and shit, building relationships with the people who own these assets. Okay. I know on all 962 owners that own all 2,045 assets over 10 units in Northern half of Florida, I know who their wives and husbands are, children, where they went to school, background pictures on their Facebook, what they do for hobbies, every asset they own, what they paid for it. all day long, all I'm doing is building that relationship, right? That's why it's so difficult to go directly to a seller and try to interrupt 10, 15, 20 years of relationship between that seller and the 8 or 9 other brokers he interacts with on a regular basis. Very hard to penetrate that, right? We have a trust, we have a bond.
So,
they know I'm going to provide them an insane price and I'm going to bring them 10, 15 offers. They know that.
and if you can't provide the insane price, then it's not gettable, right? They know that too. And
that's right.
And I think what you provide at the end of the day is, I mean, the credibility and in terms of the data. And by the way, the original data creation that you're doing, like out there in the weeds, grassroots data collection. But the experience level, the dozens and dozens of conversations they've already had with you, they know when you look at them in the eye and say, I can get this done or I can't get this done, that's probably what they're looking at, right?
Right.
And that amount of confidence that you can instill in people is so valuable. And I can see why I can see if I was a seller, you'd be my guy in Northern Florida for sure. So
I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. So, Beau, LinkedIn, best place for listeners to reach out to you?
LinkedIn and beaubeery.com, BEAUBEERY.com. And whether you do business in Florida or not, the reason you want to visit the website is there's a couple of widgets there. Number one, if you're ever looking to invest in Florida, I have a recent transactions button at the very top. I just created this widget. I'm the only one I know that has it, but I literally display the trailing 2 years of every single sale over 10 units for the entire northern half of Florida. It's out there, all the information you want on there. Number two, there's a resources section where when you click on it, you'll see the markets I cover. All the stats I have for each market, those are the kind of stats you want to master as an investor for the markets that you cover, right? Because when a broker brings you a deal or a seller or whatever the case may be, if you're spending the first week and a half trying to learn a market or what things go for and what rents should be and what construction company you're going to use and management group, you've already friggin' lost, dude. Like, I mean, you got to know everything about those markets so you can pounce on opportunities very quickly. I also have LOI templates on there and calculation templates and just things that might be helpful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's stuff I didn't even know about. That's awesome. Just to speak to one thing, the fact that you knew, number one, how many, the inventory or how many units or how many assets in your market there are in your unit count.
Yep.
And you know that, so you know that you knew the total and you knew the volume amount, I believe was, you knew the number of owners that owned those 2,000 something assets, right? Like,
yep.
I mean, that right there, what does that tell you guys? Like that's high level statistical market knowledge. And honestly, if you asked me point blank about those two numbers in Columbus, I wouldn't know it. And I like to think that I'm a Columbus expert, and I think in a lot of ways I am, but we're always getting better. And these are the sorts of conversations that hopefully point out to you ways of getting better. And I'll just close with this. Do you think Audible is your best bet on your book?
I would think so, because it's me personally reading it, and it's just the inflection I give at different points in readings really drives home a point. So and it's also the cheapest version. So I think that's a great one.
Yeah. So listeners, right now on your phone, you've got the Audible app. Likely go do a search on Beau Beery, BEERY, not the other way. I won't even say it, but BEERY, multifamily investors who dominate. Listen to that book. It's not a long one, but it is a powerhouse. And I promise you, it's gonna like just completely transform your broker relations and hopefully your results in really short order. If you want brokers to bring you legit off market deals, you need to read this book.
Yep.
And I'm not promising that's going to happen, but your chances are a lot better if you do. So, Beau, thanks, man. Awesome stuff.
I appreciate you having me on. This is always fun. Thank you.
Yeah, super fun. Loved it, every minute of it. And listeners, hope you did too, and hope that this is just another point of value for you. We love providing it. Of course, if you liked, I don't say this very often, but if you like the episode, we love getting the like and the rating and review on whatever platform you're on. helps us a lot, actually. And so appreciate that. Appreciate you guys listening, and just want to continue to contribute to you. So thanks, Beau. Thanks, listeners. And we will see you on the next episode, everybody. Take care.
This has been the Apartment Gurus with Tate Siemer. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. To contact Tate, go to www.investwithgreenlight.com for access to his investor portal and Calendly link. He loves to hear from you and thanks you for being a valued listener. Just a reminder that you are the guru. See you on the next episode of the Apartment Gurus.